Over a decade after Natalee Holloway disappeared, her mother opens up about what really happened. But before we start, please make sure to subscribe to m&rtv and hit the bell so you never miss any upload from us. Also, leave a like right now. Natalee Holloway had her whole life ahead of her when she suddenly vanished on an unofficial school trip to Aruba in 2005. And for years, her mom, Beth, searched desperately for any clues that might lead to her daughter's whereabouts. Then, nearly a decade and a half after the teenager disappeared, Beth returned to the Caribbean island for a very important reason. Natalee was the oldest of two children born to Dave and Beth Holloway, who at the time lived in Tennessee. Following the couple's divorce in 1993, however, Beth wed successful Alabama-based businessman George "Jug" Twitty, and Natalee and her little brother Matthew would subsequently relocate with their mother to Mountain Brook, a well-to-do city near Birmingham, Alabama. Natalee was a star student, too, as she graduated from Mountain Brook High School with honors, but the teen hadn't always had her nose stuck in a book. You see, she had also packed her schedule with a number of extracurricular activities, including participating in the dance team and the National Honor Society. She was also due to start at the University of Alabama after having been awarded a scholarship to the prestigious school. Prior to starting college, however, Natalee and her classmates planned to celebrate their graduation in style. In May 2005, a group of 125 former students of Mountain Brook High School therefore jetted out to Aruba for a short vacation. At the time, Natalee was just 18, but 7 chaperones were also there to watch over her and the other kids. Yet according to Natalee's mom, her daughter was hardly a party animal. In a 2006 interview with Vanity Fair, Beth instead claimed that the teen was motivated and well-behaved, and not typically one for boyfriends or raucous behavior. As a result, she had some worries about allowing Natalee to go on the hedonistic trip to Aruba. Beth would later tell the magazine Natalee was very smart but very naive. Nevertheless, the Aruba vacation was seen as a rite of passage for graduates of the school, and the teen's stepbrother, George, had actually done the same years before. Ultimately, then, the mom of two gave permission for her daughter to go. So in the early hours of May 26, 2005, Beth took Natalee over to a friend's home, ready for the trip to Aruba. And before leaving, the mom arranged to meet her daughter at the airport after her long weekend in the Caribbean. Tragically, though, the teenager would never return home, and her family would never see her again. In November 2019, Beth recalled her final moments with Natalee on ABC's 2020, explaining, "I helped her get her bag out of the car and just kissed her goodbye and said, 'I love you. Have a great time.' And then she entered the door and the door closed. Never could I have imagined that would be the last time." Then, once the Mountain Brook High students arrived in Aruba, they reportedly embraced the island's famous party atmosphere. In fact, Police Commissioner Gerald Dompig would later tell Vanity Fair, "I don't want to demonize them, but the group really went far, very far in terms of having a good time." Dompig, who was in charge of the investigation in Natalee's subsequent disappearance until 2006, claimed that the students had participated in wild partying, a lot of drinking, and lots of room switching every night. He added, "We know the Holiday Inn told them they weren't welcome next year." And while Beth had asserted that partying was not in her daughter's nature, the teenager reportedly let loose as well. In his Vanity Fair interview, Dompig added, "Natalee, we know she drank all day every day. We have statements she started every morning with cocktails. So much drinking that Natalee didn't show up for breakfast 2 mornings. And of course, it could be expected that teenagers on their first trip away from home would test the boundaries of their newfound freedom. That's why the graduates had been accompanied to Aruba by a group of chaperones in the first place, and with reasonable adults around, parents may have been satisfied that their kids would keep safe. According to Mountain Brook High teacher Bob Plummer, who accompanied the graduates to Aruba, the adults checked in with the teens every day to ensure that everything was okay. That said, as trip organizer Jody Behrman told Fox News in 2005, the chaperones were not supposed to keep up with their every move. The kids, then, were somewhat free to enjoy themselves. What's more, Aruba was considered a safe, tranquil place where visitors could enjoy themselves. The island may not feel all that foreign to most Americans either. It's well developed for one, and there are familiar food chains, including McDonald's and Taco Bell, that give tourists a taste of home. Perhaps that's why Natalee's disappearance on the last day of her trip sent shockwaves through the United States and beyond. The last known sighting of the teenager took place at 1:30 a.m. on May 30th. At that time, she was outside the Orangestad venue known as Carlos and Charlie's. Later that day, however, she didn't turn up for her return flight home. That morning, the graduates all gathered in the hotel lobby in preparation for their flight. Then, when Natalee didn't show, Behrman called Beth to make her aware of the worrying situation. Recalling this life-changing conversation, the mom of two later told 2020, "They tell me that my daughter Natalee is missing and that no one has seen her." Hours later, and still no sign of Natalee, Beth boarded a private jet to Aruba alongside her husband, Jug, and two of his friends. The party then arrived on the island at about 10 p.m. that evening, but while it was late, the group hit the ground running with the search for the missing teenager, and to begin with, they traveled to the last place where she had been spotted. During the course of that first night in Aruba, Beth discovered that Natalee had last been seen in a car with Dutch teen Joran van der Sloot and his two friends Deepak and Satish Kalpoe. Van der Sloot, then 17 years old, was living on the island and studying at the International School of Aruba, and according to witnesses, he seemed like a fairly harmless character. However, when Beth mentioned van der Sloot to an employee at the Holiday Inn, she had a different opinion. The mom later explained to Vanity Fair magazine, the woman knew exactly who he was, Joran van der Sloot, and then she said, these were her exact words, "He tends to prey upon young female tourists." It's believed that Natalee met van der Sloot and the Kalpoe brothers at a hotel casino earlier in the evening of her disappearance. Surveillance footage also shows the young American woman sitting around a blackjack table with the Dutch teen. Then, later that evening, further CCTV captured her leaving Carlos and Charlie's in a car with the three of them. So given that van der Sloot may have had vital information on her daughter's whereabouts, Beth's group went to visit him at home, along with two local police officers. And while at first the student professed to have no knowledge of Natalee, he later admitted to spending time with the American teen on the night of her disappearance. Van der Sloot claimed that he and the Kalpoe brothers had driven Natalee to Arashi Beach because she had wished to look at the sharks there. He also claimed that he and Natalee had had sex in the back of Deepak's car near a local lighthouse before the trio dropped the American off at the Holiday Inn at around 2 a.m. Van der Sloot alleged that Natalee had tripped as she left the car, although she didn't allow him to help her. After that, he said that he had continued to watch Natalee as he and Deepak drove away, at which point he reportedly witnessed the teenager being approached by a man in a black shirt, and the Dutch student's versions of events was backed up by his friend Deepak, who was with him when the police questioned him at his house. In the meantime, a search operation was underway on the island. Streams of local and international volunteers looked for Natalee, while civil servants numbering in the thousands were given time off by the island's government to join the effort. Dutch Marines also carried out an in-depth examination of the island's coastline. Then, in the days after Natalee had gone missing, initial arrests were made. The dark-shirted man that van der Sloot had claimed he had seen approaching the teen was believed to have been a security guard, leading police to subsequently detain two Aruban men who previously worked in the hotel security. But even at this point in the investigation, Beth believed that the authorities had gone after the wrong suspects. In fact, she had been convinced from the outset that van der Sloot was involved in Natalee's disappearance. When talking about the night when she had first met the Dutch national, Beth told 2020, "I thought, you're it." And it soon emerged that the Aruban authorities shared Beth's suspicions about van der Sloot. Yes, police ultimately released the two detained security guards without charge, then arrested van der Sloot, along with both Kalpoes, on suspicion of Natalee's kidnap and murder. While detained, however, all 3 suspects altered their versions of events. Now they claim that they hadn't left the American teen at the Holiday Inn. Instead, Vandersloot said that the Kalpos had left him and Natalee at the beach near the Marriott Hotel. He apparently then parted ways from Natalee there, despite the fact that she was supposedly struggling to stay conscious. And while the Kalpos initially backed up Vandersloot's new account, the brothers later started pointing the finger towards their friend. In turn, Vandersloot changed his story for a second time, now claiming that Natalee had been escorted away by the siblings. All 3 men appeared in front of a judge on July 4, 2005. Although the Kalpol brothers were subsequently released, Vandersloot, on the other hand, was held for another 60 days before finally being let go. And while the trio were all later arrested, twice for the Kalpos, a dearth of supporting evidence meant that none were ever formally charged. Then, in 2007, the Aruban authorities decided to close the case, thus leaving Natalee's disappearance unsolved. Her family had no remains to lay to rest either, nor anyone to blame. That being said, Beth was still convinced that Vandersloot was involved. She would tell 2020, "He's a monster. I know that he was responsible for the demise of Natalee, and I'll never, never not believe that." So while it appeared that the police were no longer on Vandersloot's tail, Beth made it her mission to prove that he was involved with Natalee's disappearance. As she told 2020, "Did I know what was to come? No, but I knew that I was going to hang on to him till my last breath." And over the years, Vandersloot gave conflicting accounts about what had happened to Natalee. In 2008, he suggested, for instance, that she had died on the morning of her disappearance and that a friend had subsequently gotten rid of her body. In addition, he claimed that he'd sold the American teen as a sex slave. The Dutch student later retracted both of these stories, however. Yet Beth was still determined to prove Vandersloot's involvement in her daughter's disappearance. In one desperate last-ditch effort, then, she sent the Dutch student $25,000. The money acted as an initial payment, as Beth had pledged Vandersloot a total sum of $250,000 if he gave any details regarding the whereabouts of Natalee's remains. After Beth sent Vandersloot the cash, however, he left the country. In an email, he told the mom's lawyer, John Q. Kelly, "I did not tell you the truth, so the information you have is worthless. I'm sorry for making a fool out of you. If that is why you think, I think you are a nice man and a man of your word, and I am most definitely not." That could have very well been the end of the story. Then, exactly 5 years after Natalee disappeared, on May 30th, 2010, a 21-year-old woman was deemed to be missing in the Peruvian capital of Lima. That woman was Stephanie Flores Ramirez, and like Natalee, Ramirez had been captured on CCTV at the same casino as Vandersloot in the hours before she had vanished. Lima authorities subsequently raided a hotel room booked under Vandersloot's name, where, tragically, they found Ramirez's dead body. The Dutchman had already escaped to Chile at that point, but he later returned to Peru to face questions over the young woman's murder, and on June 7th he confessed to the killing, receiving a 28-year sentence for the crime in January 2012. Beth has since been haunted by the idea that Vandersloot may have traveled to Peru with the money she had sent him in exchange for information about Natalee. However, the mom of 2 refutes the suggestion that she's in any way to blame for Ramirez's death. As she told 2020, whoever was responsible for letting Joran leave that island, Aruba, they are the ones that have to lose sleep at night over Stephanie Flores' death, not me. Currently, Vandersloot's prison term is scheduled to come to an end in 2038, after which there's a chance that he could be extradited to America on extortion charges. For now, though, Beth and her family are attempting to piece their lives together in the wake of Natalee's disappearance. And in 2019, Natalee's mother returned to Aruba to make peace with the island. Speaking on 2020, Beth explained, 14 years later, Aruba has become a lot less significant to me. It's interesting how all these landmarks that were such a driving force in our search for Natalee are just, they're gone. Carlos and Charlie's is gone. This whole area is gone. This place doesn't control me anymore.